The Infringement Guise, Part 2, Trump Those Threats. Hello again, and welcome to the Rise of the Eco Guards, Stand on Guard with Me channel. In this part of the Infringement Guise video series entitled Trump Those Threats, Part 2, in this introductory of the Infringement Guise extended series of videos, I'll elaborate further to my recently posted video entitled The Infringement Guise, Part 1, Visions of the Emblematic Stars, wherein this is an extended and revised version that better articulates my thoughts, which is a very much more intense series of videos where I can break some of these matters down a little bit better. I'll further and better express my different and limited perspectives of what I see, sense, and feel to be true, as is transpiring in this recent urgent or catastrophic political conflict and the many forms of human crisis points that have more intensely developed within our countries in the last decade, or at least 10 years in Canada, maybe not so long in the United States. Anyways, this video will limitedly and also partly reflect what I believe is truly occurring with the newly inaugurated 47th President of the United States of America, but will also express many of the subject matters that we'll be delving into as this video series moves along. Anyways, Mr. Trump is a man in which I do have great respect for what he had already and also wants to further achieve as it relates to bringing about America's second golden age, which I truly believe should have already occurred prior to September 11th, 2001. Before we were all hijacked by the old world order, security deep states, and past corporate conglomerates in all our countries. I want to be clear about this. These are my bold and uniquely different comprehensive perspectives and should not be interpreted as anything that Mr. Trump, the 45th and now 47th President of the United States, or POTUS believes or not. I've never had the privilege of meeting the man, nor would I truly know what he wants or even his true motives for his actions. But I will say, his continuous actions and many statements of late kind of points to something interesting, but also points to the realities of something quite dangerous as it relates to the actions of many others, including those of many Canadian politicians, whom truly don't have anyone's best interest at heart. Well, at least none of our average Canadian people's interests, except for their own. Anyways, these are my beliefs, and may not rub certain peoples the right ways, but that's life, for there are also many of them whom have not impressed me at all, but have also rubbed me the wrong way. And as the last living leader and founder of the Eco Guards organizations and Canadian ex-politician, that should say a lot. But that's probably just my wishful thinking. But the United States of America, and to be more factual, Western economies have gone bankrupt and are collapsing fast as they attempt to hide those facts from all the masses of peoples in all our countries. With that now indicated, there is a possible innovative solution that will very much benefit a great many of our combined hard-working individuals that for a long time were overlooked and even minimized by a great many governments of our past, but that requires some thoughtful work and even some negotiated compromises in the form of a North American Productivity and Protective Alliance, NAPA for short, which includes the United States of America, Canada, St. Pierre and Miquelon, Greenland, Iceland, Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama, which could all be the beneficial keys to all our prosperity, security, and innovative futuristic founded societies. But only if we work together, like never before. For all our security and survivals within the greater North American continent is truly at stake. The sooner we all comprehend these facts and act accordingly, and position ourselves on a better unified, tighter, limited North American front, the better for all of us. That's not to say that we will not work with others, just not to the same levels or extent as was done for all those decades prior. For we can no longer just give our taxpayers' monies away for whatever those other foreign entities want for their interests, or spread our military presence throughout the world, while leaving our homelands undefended. Well, at least in a general manner, for there will be some strategic areas of concern, just not to the same current extent. And I truly believe that all of these countries need to join together in a greater form or union, but as truly independent sovereign countries, dedicated to our overall fiscal, military, and social or societal, industrial, and even our own form of a governance-based digital unified order, well beyond anything previously seen by those corporate conglomerates. but may allow us to join in a union of sorts, even call it something different than Napa. For instance, call it what you will, even something like the United Countries of the Americas, UCA for short, with the United States of America as the primary country of guidance for the overall union. After all, the whole world previously looked to them in the past for those types of security and guidances prior to those elitists interfering and hijacking that beacon of hope. That combined union of American countries could give us the abilities to be better able to hold off or even combat and defend against those others and their intents on creating their own forms of new world orders that truly don't benefit anyone other than those want to be elitists that have been attempting at penetrating and running our supposed democratic countries, or even many republics throughout the world, into the ground, all for their own major financial gains and negative agendas. And these things could be achieved in different manners other than the ways that those others want to create. For this can be achieved without letting any other types of systems from ever influencing our governing lawmaking bodies, as is taking place in all our countries right now, with all the corporate lobbying going on. And the President of the United States, or POTUS, Mr. Trump, I believe comprehends and truly recognizes those facts, but also the current and past threats that are beginning to limitedly show their presence. And that's what I perceptually see as part of the reason he's acting in this manner. That said, I do also recognize that he may believe that such a thing can only occur under the umbrella of a nation-state, such as the United States of America. For those presumed threats that our current so-called politicians are using for their political gain, you know, those that Mr. Trump or POTUS has stated towards Canada, as well as several other nations' sovereignty, are truly nothing in comparison to having to face multiple military presence by not-so-favorable foreign entities or militaries intent on eventually completely controlling some of their business interests within our nations or our natural assets, waterways within Canada, of what some believe used to be considered sovereign Northern Canadian territory, which it actually still is, partly thanks to our combined Canadian-American cooperative alliance. And that's regardless of the facts that our past governance bodies from over 6 decades ago were not inclined to heavily and militarily protect those areas. For those actions back then could have also been misconstrued as beyond provocative by the USSR many decades ago. That indicated, also comprehend that during the Cold War, Trump's predecessors and military conjointly protected our homeland after insisting we shut down our own highly advanced protective Avro-Aero program in the late 1950s, and then we initiated the NORAD program together. So you see, we truly owe each other the respect and sovereignty that we've all worked hard to achieve. But we also owe each other a much brighter, prosperous future for all our children's children. Therefore, we still stand on guard and free, or at least somewhat, but the recently discovered efforts by foreign entities to heavily influence many of our political parties that would not only favor their business interest, but would also allow the bypassing of our border security efforts. As these foreigners use those weaknesses to attempt to achieve the same manner of things that the British and merchant traders used on them centuries ago to help grow their empire, namely something that caused the Opium Wars. Talking about weakness, they found one of our weak so-called political leaders, a particular note that they targeted, and he would comply and bring his entire political party, as well as the mostly unsuspecting Canadian society and many businesses along for the ride. Namely, the entire Trudeau super-leftist and woke, so-called feminist Liberal Party of Canada. After all, Mr. Trudeau Jr. self-admittedly admires the Communist Chinese and the manners in which they can get things done in their vast country, even though he and his Liberal Party, whom is also heavily penetrated and controlled by the World Economic Forum at the same time, has never learned from those other actions or really been able to get anything really done in this country. And that's evident all around, with all the petroleum products that have been stopped or at least very limitedly put out from our western provinces from making it to market or even to our own refineries on the East Coast. But then again, with such a large group of penetrated government officials and bureaucratic employees, you would need future reserves of oil for the lubrications to follow. And that includes those politicians from Quebec and their bullshit hindrances. For the Liberal Party touts the same Green New Deal agenda of the United Nations and the WEF. I wonder who controls their real agenda. But even that agenda will be brought up again in another of my upcoming videos of this series. But truly comprehend these interesting real humanitarian and environmental thoughts. When a political party kills mining of natural resources and pipeline deals, and prevents the world from attaining our liquefied natural gas, which just so happens to be a far better, less CO2 creating fuel than coal. And the European market, let alone the Japanese market, also suffers because of such. Something is truly wrong with not only the way of conducting their actions, but cost every Canadian the ability to live better, more meaningful lives. And don't get me started on the fact that the newly installed leader of the Liberals, whom personally owns stakes in coal mining or the mass transportation of such upon the world stage. I'll let you know many things that I perceive and sense and feel to be true of what has and is still taking place in Canada as it relates to one of our influenced federal political parties, and those further actions that Mark Carney has been involved with over many years, whether directly or indirectly, by his actions elsewhere. Anyways, let's get on with it. Carney's Vaulted Candies, also known as the one-sided justified conversation about Mark Carney and his real past and current plans in and for Canada. Who in the world would believe this guy's comprehensions, or even his conversations and thoughts, as it relates towards his appointment by the United Nations as a special envoy for climate action and finance? For he has no real practical experience in any fields within the environmental corrective initiatives or the factual mitigations of real pollutants and innovative eco-solution specialties that many of the organizations and companies he's involved with or invested in are not even dealing with, let alone concerned about. And the more recent media interviews that he's attended or conducted points to the fact that his IQ may obviously not be that high. I've ventured to guess he's below average. But that could all be part of his game. Certainly not good enough to be our Prime Minister if he truly plays games of this nature. For he'll fall in line with past Liberal government actions or inactions of all the other Chinese and WEF manipulative matters instigated within this country, that I'll further express in this and several other videos of this series. As some people like to ask, for a multitude of reasons, what's his net worth? And really it does not matter, but some like to point out that he's worth $96 billion. But since his entrance into our Canadian political arena, they've now indicated that past number to have been made in error. But it's now been presumably adjusted to $5 million, which again, really matters not, except for the fact of some sort of manipulations or cover-ups transpiring. For I don't believe that the World Economic Forum or WEF founder would show much of an interest in him, like he has, if it were so low. My comprehensions and belief is that he's an opportunistic, over-glorified accountant or former banker who takes credit for saving Canada's economy in 2008, when those financial, institutional, and banking rules and protective protocols and structures were put in place long before his tenure as the Bank of Canada governor. And apparently not a very good Bank of England governor as well, based on what a former British member of Parliament, whom was sitting in that Westminster governance structure during Carney's time at that bank, is now warning Canadians about. He should not be advising anyone about those sensitive environmental and corrective societal manners as it relates to those subject matters, but possibly not advising anyone concerning accounting as well, and that is based on the lack of accounting practices properly used and has been revealed within our own Liberal government's recent accountability reports. At best, I suppose he could teach grifting to the peoples, and we may all need it, if he has his way, in the event he's truthfully elected by our peoples as Canada's next Prime Minister. And that's regardless if he presumably wins the upcoming Liberal leadership race, or if he's installed as such by the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Moreover, since the World Economic Forum and the United Nations have chosen him and endorsed or backed his beliefs about net zero and their deceptive non-factual or questionable scientific versions of climate change, those facts should point to the truth. For them, it's not about anything to do with protecting our ecology and peoples, or stopping the extent of real pollutions being expelled into our ecosystems, many times by the very companies that they all have a stake in. It's about protecting their power and control over their influences they wield over all our governments, nations, and peoples, and the manners in which they make vast amounts of money, through their linked collaborations with those international companies, also known as foreign entities, as well as their other agendas of their further deceits of whatever manners, and of course their population control agendas and factual actions towards those outcomes. And God knows, it's not about his public persona or potentially upbeat optimistic, but hateful manners of dealing with pressure points that any good prime minister would require to properly handle really negative situations. From what I can tell, he lacks those abilities greatly, and Mr. Trump or POTUS has already inadvertently proven such. For as a presumed good, or even supposedly great leader, you don't incite a vindictive show, or whatever you call it, towards the most powerful nation on earth, or the leader of such, whom also protects your assets, and is also your biggest trading partner, who could cause irreparable actions upon us all as a country and peoples. And that's regardless of Mr. Trump or POTUS's comments or protective actions concerning North America. For it's his job to do that, when he truly sees what's going on in this country. And truly comprehend this fact, the United States knows more about what's going on in Canada. Actually more than they are telling anyone. Probably more than our own liberal government knows. But also understand this, or at least consider it, anyone that's influenced by outside or international entities that claims to also have the true interest of Canada and its peoples at heart, is lying through their teeth, and truly worse, but does not even deserve to be considered as the leader of the highest office in the land. And also comprehend this, those facts also points to who all you peoples think are traitors to our once dear and cherished country of Canada, whom has much work ahead in order to attain that faithful state once more. Well, that should be all that you need to know to never vote for any of these immoral people ever again. But can you imagine, now stating that if elected as Prime Minister, he'll use the Canada Emergency Act to institute major make-work projects that they have always killed in the past? They are truly insane, for no such actions would be required. Just let those industries go to work and keep your hands out of that, as well as out of our pockets. Anyways, I suppose, when you have one group such as the Communist Chinese on one side, trying to control how much natural resources Canada puts out, all in an attempt to have you and your country from bringing your goods to market, which would be in direct competition to their market, plus having almost the same types of actions on the other side of the spectrum, doing it for almost the same reasons, but with more nefarious reasons involved as well. That does not bode well for our society and business interests, let alone our future prospects for our country. And to think that our business people play along with all their plans kind of just boggles the mind. Moreover, there has to be more to this, for I believe some people in our government are getting big paydays, and they've learned a manner of hiding it. Nevertheless, to also allow the Chinese to place some of their police forces and facilities, or in my opinion military boots on our soil, could be construed as not only a violation of our sovereignty, but an act of war, or at least serious espionage, unless they were invited into our country by the so-called compromised political leaders that have ruined our nation in the last 10 years. And if that's the case, without seeking the peoples of Canada's inputs, we'll see where that goes. But also understand this, if I see that as a real threat, how do you think the United States of America sees it? For there were also some indications that our own military were also teaching the Chinese Arctic combat training. But also understand, or at least try to get your head around the fact, that great manipulative actions have transpired in Canada, some by foreign entities that wanted to control some politicians, in order to pass favorable laws that would allow them to conduct their own types of actions that the Canadian peoples would not consider good for our society. Or those other foreign entities that wanted to allow great immigrations into our country and attempt a societal upheaval, just to distract everyone's attention away from learning the truth of all these matters. And regardless of their reasonings, they've instigated the attention that they should have known would appear by all the true patriots in many countries. That indicated, I also believe that all of us within the greater North American sphere were being politically played and directly interfered with by many international deep states, occult groups, and even past old world orders in a multitude of manners and ways by many other foreign entities for quite some time, and not necessarily those whom you would think. But here's a slight hint. Ever notice the last names and peoples that lead most of those world organizations or groups? Come on, put two and two together. And it's not the Jewish peoples, as some like to always point to. And truly, No thanks to a great many other factors that contributed to further hardships, including the fact that a great many countries have been treated beyond badly in the last few decades, and also financially and physically destroyed and attempted to be heavily controlled for those decades by not only the manipulated American hegemony and deep state, but also those same types of foreign state entities and major international business or corporate conglomerations interests from other foreign countries as well, that all help to manipulate those harmful actions. For every one of those countries and foreign unions have their own forms of deep state or elitist and internal security apparatuses that sometimes work together, but not always. They believe or think they have the blood of the gods within themselves, when in fact, they are bigger narcissistic personalities than most. And that's mostly due to their historical accurate past and even still current inbreeding within royalty, or of course the elitist. Truly immoral, moronic, perverted sycophants, or imps for short. It's true. And that fact is part of the reason that caused the BRICS nations to rise up as an economic powerhouse, and now a different new type of world order has formed, for many of them are sick of being trampled on by powerful military forces, or even financially bullied. For they witnessed what had transpired mostly in the Middle East, and were not about to just stand by until it was their turn. But also understand that many within those nations believe that their cultures are meant to rule the world. That said, now that the BRICS nations have united in this vast economic entity or powerhouse and continue to add more and more countries to that so-called financial union, they've now become the big bad bullies that are starting to look closely at all the past groups within that old world order and the things and manners in which they achieved their ways of control. While they lie to POTUS about wanting to replace the American dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. Also understand this, they are all committing espionage against each other, stealing ideas, military secrets, advanced computing technologies, other industrial designs, such as robotics, and so many other intellectual properties, including those so-called artificial intelligence predictive algorithmic programmings that the world is being deceived to believe is true AI. Although those apps are factually interesting and exciting and can help a great many creators of unique merchandise and other productions, it's not the end-all and be-all of human creativity. But those with the money and power will act in whatever manner they please. And part of the manners in which they act is to manipulate the average peoples of the world, whom they believe are their slaves, who must cycle through and work hard every day just to survive in this last incarnation of that ancient beast system that was never intent on helping any of the masses of small, dirty peoples, thereby allowing themselves to attain great wealth at the expense of those that have always tried to help humanity, but also just survive in this cruel world. And that fact is also done by many companies and organizations within the United States and elsewhere, for I have, as well as some of the eco-guards organizations have experienced that many times, firsthand. But that also transpires within many governments and political groups or parties as well. And that takes place in our country as well, for when you can't trust your own government, with proposed innovative eco-based solutions that were meant to create vast numbers of real ecologically sound jobs and assist with the proper manners of dealing with our real ecological devastations, not their forms of bullshit, climate change, or Green New Deal agendas. And then those same proposed forms of creations inevitably find their ways into the province of Quebec, as well as New Brunswick, while separately spreading those off to their supporters, which turns out to be mostly their French friends, in order for them to invest in creating a great deal of separate companies that focus their imitative ecologically based efforts based off of your creations. Then you can realize a great many problems on our horizons, but also all the real infringement guises that are taking place. Anyways, I'll leave off on this video series for now, and I'll ask that you join me next time for the upcoming video in this series, entitled The Infringement Guise, Part 3, The Great Indebting.